go listen to people. Like, just ask some questions and just listen. Don't give advice. Don't try to solution. Just listen to what they're telling you about their day-to-day lives. Be curious about how things go for them, and then sit in the ick of that for a while.
Welcome to Vibecast, the podcast that dives deep into the heartbeat of workplace culture. I'm your host, Kristi. Join me in conversations with extraordinary leaders as we unravel their experiences, both positive and negative, that have impacted workplace culture. This podcast is more than storytelling. It's about actionable insights. Are you ready to transform the vibe at your workplace? Let's go. Today, I had the pleasure of doing another duo episode with the founder and co-owner of Doris Research, Sam Julka and Meghan Tooman. Sam is the founder with a background in commercial interior design and qualitative research, and Meghan is the VP and co-owner with a background in statistics and quantitative research. They are truly yin and yang, and their company, Doris, is a team of human ecologists. They use organizations' data to draw connections between your people's daily behaviors and your organization's performance. Then they help you figure out how to drive positive change. Listen in to the fun we had. All right, gals. Well, I am so excited to have you guys on, Meghan and Sam. I would just love for each of you to kind of introduce yourself to some degree of like who you are and what you do at Doris, because I think that's really important for people to understand before they start listening to our conversation. So if you don't mind, go for it.
Sam, you want to go first? I was going to tell you, take it away, Meghan.
Well, if that doesn't tell us something, I don't know what does.
That's right. Oh my gosh. You go. You go.
You want me to go? Okay. Hi, I'm Meghan. I work at Doris as the vice president and co-owner. My background is in statistics. So I'm the quant part of this little yin and yang that you'll get to know here. So I love numbers, and I love bringing insights from those to help organizations. So I was telling somebody recently, I was at a leadership conference, and it's like, Doris is really the externalization of my values. So I love data and I love making an impact. And that's really what our organization does. And so kind of cool to be able to talk about it and work here. Yeah.
Yeah. Externalization of your values. So you're like living in your purpose. So cool.
That is cool.
Sam, what about you?
Darn, that's awesome. I'm Sam Julka, founder and president of Doris, which is the company that Meghan and I co-own and work for and with and all those things. Sometimes it sounds like we're talking about a third person, Doris. We do our intros.
It's probably like a baby.
Yeah, sometimes it feels like a baby, very needy. Sometimes it's up in the middle of the night. Yep. Owner, founder. I'm more of a qualitative researcher. So my master's degree is in design research, which is in a qualitative field. So I'm kind of the words or letters, I guess, to Meghan's numbers, which is a really great marriage to have in research because not a lot of folks have kind of both sides of that.
A true yin and yang. You guys.
Yes, it is. And I feel like each of us find a great deal of interest in the other's subject matter expertise, which is always kind of fun when I'm like, wait, that's not how averages work. And she, then explains.
She gets like on the whiteboard and like
18 levels above my knowledge of math. Yeah.
That's awesome. The most I know about statistics is the word statistics. And then you've lost me past that, honestly.
I like to just say things like p-value. It's like, no, it's a thing, but I don't know what it means.
You just throw that around sometimes.
Yeah, it's just like,
let me introduce you to Meghan. She'll talk to you about the details of your p-value.
I'm like, wow, do we want to meet her? I don't know. I don't know that I want to talk about any p-values.
Oh, that's good. Awesome. Well, I always like to ground the conversation in how the folks that I'm talking to define a vibe, because I just feel like that's so important for the rest of our conversation. So I don't know if you want to do it together, individually, whatever you choose. I would just love to hear, your definition of a vibe.
Count us 3. Just kidding.
You guys rehearse this before.
After every question, we're going to do...
We should just shout.
Yeah,
We need to have like a Jeopardy button.
that's right. Plus in.
Who rings in first? Defining a vibe. I was thinking about this a little bit ahead of time. We probably, if I'm thinking about defining a vibe, I probably think about it how I would think more academically about how I would define the word culture. Maybe I think of culture as, the values, behaviors, and beliefs of a group of people that are sort of convening somewhere together, whether that's a workplace, a community center, probably a family, all different third places where people might be. I think how are they behaving? Are they loud? Are they quiet? Are they, seated and focused? Are they jumping around? What do they value? Do they value coffee? Do they value laughter? What sorts of things does that group of people either value or discourage? And then maybe what do they believe in? They believe that ping pong is the only way to solve all problems. Trying to understand those 3 things to me, or knowing what maybe they are, is where you might find a vibe, which is such a fun word now, I think, and is used so often to describe things,
It really is used often. I see it like on the Celsius can and on a billboard, right? So it's everywhere. Meghan, what about you?
Yeah, I was actually thinking the exact same thing as Sam. It's this idea of culture that we are working in so often now, where people are saying, come back to the office to build culture and to build community. And it's not something that you can always measure, but we're circling around it, right? And it changes depending on, sometimes it's the mood in the room and you're like, ooh, I'm picking up on weird vibes, which is very behavioral, right? And it's reading people's emotions and facial expressions versus, I think a lot of times our clients are trying to create a vibe with their space. We want this to be a relaxed space. We want this to be fun. But unless you have the behaviors that match with it, you can't create a vibe without the people portion of it, right? So it's like this almost, you can't define it always, but you're like, ooh, I feel relaxed in this environment. Or, oh, we had really great vibes when we had that conversation, right? We just couldn't stop talking. And a lot of times after I have a cool meeting, I'll be like, oh, I'm so energized after that, right? Intellectually energized or whatever it is. So I feel like it morphs, vibes morph depending on where you're at.
I love the way that you thought about, which I didn't think about this, but like, you can feel the vibe of the room. Like I can usually tell when I walk into the office if you're having a good morning or a bad morning, kind of. And I think about, ooh, what's Meghan's vibe today, right?
Oh no.
Or you probably feel the same way about me or other people anybody that you're kind of.
Yes, totally.
And I think that academically, like you said, I would maybe describe somebody who can pick that up maybe quicker or faster than others as like a person who's an empath or deals with a lot of empathy in their day-to-day interactions. Like even with my children, some of them I feel like are more empathic than others, or I know there's people in my lives. But it's an interesting way to think about just saying, oh, you pick up on the vibes of people. Like that's probably a more reachable way to try to explain somebody who's able to empathetically understand something.
It's weird how like people's energy can kind of radiate, right? So like you can walk into a room and feel like the radiated energy of people without even talking to them. And I think in like this remote world that we're in a lot of the time, it's like what we miss because you feel the energy sort of, right? Like if somebody's excited or they have a smile on their face or whatever, right? But you don't like feel the radiated energy around them and like, or the chaos that's like next to me right now. You don't know that it's there because you can't see it. It's so interesting. And then you mentioned your kids. My 9-year-old So I have a 99-and-a-half-year-old grandmother, and she is not doing very well. And so I told my 9-year-old last night. I told all my kids, but I told my 9-year-old specifically. And she goes to bed and she comes in my room. Okay, my grandma was 90 when she was born. And so she didn't really know her, right? But she is sobbing because she feels like the energy in our house. She feels the energy from relatives, right? And so it's so interesting that you say that if you are more of an empath, which she definitely is, you probably pick up on the energy much more intensely, like intensity level.
I think empathy, from my academic understanding of it, is who you feel with instead of for. Like sympathy is when you feel for somebody, but empathy is when you feel with. And so it just kind of pours out of it. These people that are, higher on the continuum of empathetic. I've had many conversations with folks who've talked about how much they miss the energy, and that it's scientifically proven. We've put out like an 8-foot radius of energy into the world. That's legit. It's very real, but we can't do it virtually. We can't feel energy virtually. We can only feel it together. It's probably something that AI can't. AI can't do that, right? It will have a very hard time picking up and understanding what we're calling today a vibe. That humans have this sort of, we almost can't even describe it in words what it is, but we can all do it, some of us better than others.
I was thinking about that electronic version, or, Kristi, we haven't met in person, but I feel like we vibe, right? When we first met. And so I was thinking about one of our clients that when we get on with them, one in specific always calls me out for like nodding and smiling and like over animating my emotions. But it's because I'm trying to manufacture the vibe of what I would want that relationship to be like in person. I want them to know I'm engaged. I'm not reading email. I'm not checking other things. Like I am here with you. I'm listening to you actively and I'm not distracted. And so I think about very intentionally, probably because I am a little bit of an empath and I need it as well. But this, like, it's almost exaggerated when I'm on a call where I'm like, oh, yeah, it is great. It's good to see you. Yes, I'm paying attention. I'm muted, but I'm still here nodding. So it's like, how do you interpersonally create vibes when we physically can't be together?
If you have the secret sauce, I feel like it's what every single one of my clients is asking, right? It's just what does that look like? And I think, we talked a little bit, or you mentioned a little bit, like it's something AI can't create. And you're totally right. It's like we have to be together, and then AI can be an assistant or a tool that helps us learn or tell us behaviors that are helpful maybe. Or, you know what I mean? Like it's another tool in the toolbox versus the thing that we go to first. Because the leaders need to have certain behaviors in order to drive the vibe, but you have to be together first. So you have to have these good leaders that are then together that radiate this energy. That it's like so dynamic and complicated. It's fascinating.
I had a company I had worked for previously many, many years ago, and we always would say we could tell if the owner of the company, it was a very large company, maybe 50 or less employees, we could tell if he was in the building or not, even if we couldn't see him.
Oh, wow.
You could just feel the energy. It was just different. And so, think about that.
That's powerful.
It's hugely powerful.
Okay, Sam, what impact did that have on you or your coworkers? Or because that is a big deal.
Did you sit up straighter?
Yeah. He was jovial. So but I suppose, I'm sure many people could think about this. I could think about other places I've worked where when the owner or the boss or whomever was in the building, it was a little bit more threatening. In this situation, I think it almost was like you felt like you were energized more, like you were excited, you wanted to be excited about doing your work kind of thing. Like you knew the mission. And I think about that business that I worked at when I was pretty fresh out of undergraduate. And I was kind of learning how to operate in a business. And I think it was helpful because I spent a lot of time in the office itself. And so I could feel that energy, right? If he would walk by your desk, he would say something jokingly like, oh, you all aren't just goofing around, right? You're doing your work, or whatever. And he was saying it jokingly, but, he's still the owner. And so you kind of think about those sort of things. But as we got further into the pandemic, so this was 20 years ago that I was doing this work. And now we're talking about relationships that people need to have, and, that we're now trying to manufacture a little bit more than we ever have before. Well, what I was taught when I was younger and, immediately out of undergrad was like, kind of don't goof around at work and do your work 8 to 5 and get it done, But like, you couldn't help it. You were still talking to people and goofing around a little bit. But those things are what we've sort of missed. That vibe is what we sort of miss now because we're not all collectively together. And I think it's something that's interesting in how do leaders nowadays, what is their energy like when they're in, and or if they can't be in, if we're all like this, and how do we affect and help maybe younger people build those relationships?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I met so many people early on in my career just from being in the office and just from like, oh, I haven't seen you in so long. Like, what have you been up to? And just those conversations where now it's like, it's not weird to not see someone for a while because you're not all in the same space. So if you don't have a reason to get on a call with them, most people don't just pick up the phone. It's the wildest thing.
There are very few people I talk to on the phone. I've got to be honest. Like very, very few. I think there's maybe 4.
I'm probably like taking up 2 of that. I love talking on the phone.
I know you do.
I'm in my car a lot, kind of carting my kids around. So like phone calls are my jam. But I do have a friend who's like, don't call me. Like, can you please just text me? Like, unless it's an emergency, like just don't call me. We'll see each other in person or we'll just text. Like, it's all good. But I'm with you, Sam. I do enjoy talking on the phone, which is probably why I started a podcast too. So I could just talk some more. Like, I need a chat. I need to get some words out. All right. So tell me how you guys came to the place that you're at today. Like a little bit about your personal journey and some defining moments that brought you to where you are today. And Meghan, I'll point on you to go first.
Oh, me first. Okay. Well, it was a cold day no, not really. I was born in July, so it was probably hot.
And it's like, it could have been cold.
It couldn't have been cold. No. No. So as I said, my background is in statistics. I graduated from Purdue University with my master's in statistics. And after graduating, I started teaching at the higher ed level. So I was teaching undergraduate students introductory statistics. And I did that for about 8 years. All the while I was consulting. So I was taking on sort of odd jobs of analyses and interpretation for different types of clients. And Doris was one of my clients. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah. So through kind of connections, I was connected with Sam and they were starting their quantitative leg of data collection and analyses. And I helped for a few years just on that consulting basis. And then a couple years in, Sam asks for a meeting and she's like, okay, I need a student. I know you teach statistics. Here are all the qualities I need in that student. And I said, okay, let me think about it. I'll come back to you. And I went home and I was talking to my husband and I was like, I think I want to be that person. I think that I think it's me. Yeah. And so I'm pretty sure I asked for another meeting with you, Sam. And I'm pretty sure that was the conversation. I sat down and I was like, so I think I want it to be me. I don't want to look for a student. I think I want to work for you.
It was like having an AAU basketball team that you put together. And then Michael Jordan was like, I think I want to be on your team.
Oh, that's so awesome.
We were like, well, we were just looking for someone in 3rd grade, but like, that's cool. That is what it was like.
Oh, that's really nice. So yeah, that started it. And Sam was like, well, okay, let's do this.
Amazing. Sam, how did you, what happened in your life or what was your defining moment that you were like, I'm going to start this thing because this is that important to me that I impact organizations in the way in which I do?
Well, so my undergrad was interior design, and I practiced commercially for maybe 5 years or so. And I liked it. I am an introvert, so I liked kind of just sitting behind my computer and drawing. That was kind of like heaven for a few years. But then I started to realize that the process didn't really make sense to me. So we would spend a lot of time talking to maybe, the C-suite or a few managers when we were doing these big commercial projects. And I was lowly on the totem pole. So, I'm redlining and doing, and I'm by no means coming up with these, big grand ideas. But just watching how they were executed, I thought, my goodness, like we are really not doing a very good job of figuring out what everyday people within these organizations needs to be successful. And so it kind of bothered me, I suppose, how it was done. I always say if I win the lottery, I would go to school full time. Like I would just stop working and just go audit classes. I don't want to take the tests, to be clear, but like I just want to go learn. So I had, kind of had these thoughts, and then went to graduate school and learned about design research and design thinking. And I was learning how you can be more inclusive in research and be more engaging. And it's just kind of a good, kind of perfect storm of thinking this wasn't maybe done the right way, and then learning something that maybe could change the way that this goes. I mean, that was sort of the defining moment, was those two pieces sort of locking together.
Okay, so then you launched this child, you birthed this child, Doris, right? Who has like Doris seems like it could be a person. So
Yeah. Well, so Doris was my grandmother who lived to be 98, actually. We were talking about grandmas.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Isn't that incredible? So you launched Doris and you're like, okay, I'm doing this. And you have your first client or two. And how did you recognize that this was like something people wanted and a problem you were solving for? Because you knew in your interior design career, it's just like you're kind of doing it the wrong way or not to make an impact.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know. It was just a total risk. But I didn't have anything. I didn't have children at the time when I had started the business. And Doris we knew that people were at the center of everything we did. We wanted to name the business after a person. But I am a design researcher. So Doris is design-oriented research for impactful solutions. It's an acronym at the end of the day, but it's still my grandma. So I didn't know. So first few projects were pro bono. It was just like our very first project was with the Children's Museum of Indianapolis. Here's, I think, when I knew this was a thing. So I had done a thesis paper on this in graduate school, but it wasn't, it was a thesis project. So you're kind of testing stuff. You're not a consultant. You're just trying to figure out if the process and methods work. So did that. And then first real Doris project was with the Children's Museum. And they had been stuck. The CEO had told the chief legal counsel, hey, it's your job to redo the administrative office because board members are coming in and it looks like the 1970s in here. And they're telling me it's embarrassing. Like, we cannot expect it's that we have the world's largest children's museum here in Indianapolis. It's pretty extraordinary. It's very cool. And these people are geniuses that work there, and they just needed to be honored with something a little better. But in museums, back of house is secondary to everything, because they pour all of their money into the experience for the guests. So this the chief legal counsel is the sweetest human. Him and I are still very good friends to this day. And he just couldn't figure out, he's like, Sam, I don't know what to do. Like, everyone wants something different. I don't want to buy stuff because it could be wrong. And then that's a waste of money, And so he was stuck, and he's like, I have been tasked to do this for the last 3 years. And this year I got the ultimatum that I have to do something. Like, I've got 1 year. And so I was new enough and got introduced, and I said, okay, well, I'll help. And so went in and we interviewed everyone in the administrative. It was like 40 people or so. Did a bunch of ethnographic observations, prototyped all these crazy things for these people. And at the end of the day, he was like, this is amazing. Like, I can now make a very clear decision about what to do. And this was now 14 or 13 years ago. But they updated. Everyone was happy. They all had their voice heard. They didn't all get exactly what they wanted, but they got something that was effective and was helping. And so I think that was sort of the defining moment of, yeah, this actually is meaningful and this will change people's lives, hopefully for the better, if we can expand and keep doing this.
So how do you then incorporate what Meghan's doing into that, right? Because I think that probably predates some of the quant stuff, right?
It does, yeah. So I was operating fully qualitatively because that's how I was in unit of one at this point, right? I didn't have people that were working with me. But we started to get asked quantitative questions. Well, how often are people using that conference room? Well, I don't know. Well, how are you going to figure that out?
Does it matter?
I know, because that's important. Like, should we have them or not? Like, are they using them? And so I started to cobble together something that was so qualitative. It was like you could tell a qualitative person put together a math problem, And I think Meghan probably, if she could have tapped us on the head when she saw this, at first and said, "That's cute, you guys, nice job." It wasn't good, but that's how she started to come in because we started to get asked to do quantitative stuff that we had no ability to do. So we had to I went to my network and I knew a guy that was a math professor. And I said, I am over my head. I need help. What do I do?
Okay. And then Meghan comes into the picture. And then talk to me, Meghan, about how what you do has this significant impact on organizations that you guys work with. And what is maybe there's something that's you feel is the most important thing that you look at, or something that people might often miss, right? Or think that's unimportant, but as you roll things out and you guys put together your research becomes almost like a pillar of what they have to lean on in order to make a difference within their organization.
Yeah, so I'm actually going to steal one of Sam's lines and say that data is a commodity unless you can pull an insight from it. And so I think that's ultimately where the power of Doris comes in, because the quant without the qual leaves you with a lot of why questions. Oh, they're using that conference room a lot. Why? They don't like that desk. Why? It leaves you can see numerically what's happening, but you don't necessarily have the understanding. And if you don't have the understanding, then it's much harder to make a decision from that data. So I think there's a lot of comfort in leadership with quant and seeing numbers and values. And I think the power in the qual is being able to uphold both together and create a full story and a full insight from which you can make decisions. Because oftentimes we'll find a paradox, or we'll be vetting assumptions and we'll say, oh, it's not really this, it's that. And so I think that's ultimately the power of what Doris does versus what other organizations may do, is that we really, really dive deeply and we care about the voice of the people. So we're going to talk to people. We listen very actively and we make sure that we're collecting data that meets people where they are and is truly representative of their experience.
That is so true. You probably I'm sure there's people that present data only and then they feel like they're talking to their 3-year-old, right? It's like, why? But you're so right. That would be naturally my next question is well, why does the data show that? Well, why does it? Is it because the conference room, that door is always open, or it's the closest one to where the most people sit? Or, I would, yes, that is so true. The natural next question is why?
It is. And so often two people could look at the same graph or the same image and they pull two different insights from it, right? But if we have holistic data and well-rounded data, then it brings everybody to the same page. So we're reading from
less assumptions.
Yeah, less assumptions. And now we can have really nuanced conversations, but we're starting from the same baseline. It doesn't mean that there aren't feelings and lobbying and, perspectives and experiences, but at least we're sort of baseline at the same place.
Well, you're like bringing in the data, right? And then bringing a component of like emotional intelligence into it so that it has a feeling. Like the data then has like a heartbeat.
We're giving the data a vibe.
Yeah,
The
you're
data
giving
has
the
a
data
vibe.
a heartbeat, an energy.
gosh.
You guys, this is amazing. I love what you're doing. So could you tell me maybe, and you don't have to give the company name or anything, but like a specific project that you did that like a turnaround situation or even like a leadership turnaround situation that you impacted through the work that you do and the physical environment that you created?
From a leadership standpoint, so what we do, and people listening are going to be like, what is this group? Like, we're very emergent. If we haven't found you, you're probably not going to find us, like, because you're not looking for us, right? And so usually by the end of we make leaders very uncomfortable in the middle of our projects because we tell them all their challenges, things that are struggles, and they don't love that. Naturally, they want to solve them. By the end, we start to define criteria for what solutions might look like. And a lot of times we will hear at the end of a project from a group of leaders that they are shocked at how aligned they are and that they didn't realize that the biggest value they were going to get out of, having all this research and data presented to them in the way that we do it was that they would be aligned as a leadership team and ready to take action immediately. That's a big deal. And so we hear that quite often, like, oh my gosh, this is so thoroughly vetted that it's like not even a question as to what we need to do next. And we'll hear so I'll tell you one very concrete story that is associated with one very concrete insight. And our insights aren't usually exactly like this, but there's a manufacturer and they manufactured food, and we were helping them with a manufacturing site that they'd kind of purchased, and we're taking all these folks who worked for a different organization, under this new organization. They'd acquired it, and they treated people very differently than the previous organization, and they were trying to figure out kind of how to update the common areas when these folks came off of the lines that they were working on. And one of the data points is pretty simple. It was like, you've got 350 people coming off these lines, and they come in and you've got 4 microwaves in the break room and 2 of them don't even work. And it's like, just so you know, and this is the cascade effect of what that looks like. And the guy that I want to say he was what do they call him? Like the person who runs the most important person at the manufacturing site. They probably have an important title that I can't think of right now. He just got up and left the meeting, and they were like, where are you going? He's like, I'm going to Walmart right now to buy microwaves. Like, I'm going to buy 10. And he's like, this is ridiculous. And all the leaders were like, yeah. And there's no way we knew that. And there's no way people should, and it's like, you kind of see some of these things happen. And that one's very simple, but there are much bigger things like that happen where they're so aligned and ready to take action on something. They don't even almost have to discuss it.
It's so interesting how simple that can be, right? And for some reason, like if it were our own house, we would notice that something wasn't working because it's within like our daily workflow or but it's so fascinating to me how simple these solutions can be. And sometimes I'm sure you guys feel this way too. And in my consulting practice, I'm delivering something and I'm like, they're paying me to deliver this, but this seems so simple. But yet when they're in it, they can't see it or they don't feel it or their workflow is different than their people's workflow. But when I'm asked, it's like, well, we can't give raises. What else do we do? It's like, just walk in the shoes of your people for a day and see what their challenges are. And do they need another microwave? Amazing.
Yeah, simple. Simple is smart. And Meghan, you would talk about this for a long time, but we strive to make these very complicated concepts incredibly simple so they're easy to act on. And then you boil them so far down, and you're like, wow, this seems really simple. But it's takes a lot to get to the point where we can make it really simple.
Totally, totally. But that way people don't walk away with all this research and think, okay, this is just going to sit on the shelf. Yeah. Cause like now what, or do I need to get a committee together? Or I need to go ask for a big budget somewhere, or I need to do X, Y, and Z. Like they just overdo it in their head. So then they take no action, which then is just worse. Right. That's so crazy. Okay. So I have this burning question too, like post pandemic, because you have been at this for a long time, right? But this is like new territory. So not everybody's in office, although I think what I'm seeing is a growing trend for like the desire to be back in office. So at first it was like, oh, I don't want it. Don't force me. Don't make me. And now people are like, hey, we'd love to come back in. What do you think about that? Do we even have a space anymore? What does it look like? So what are you seeing as kind of an emerging trend within your industry and the work that you're doing in the physical space or in the quantitative research that you're doing coming at post-pandemic?
I think we were really primed for the pandemic. It kind of put us on the map in a way because prior to, and Sam, tell me if I'm wrong on this, but prior to, I think leaders didn't really know what we did or know how to leverage, but now they kind of know what they don't know. And so everybody is kind of jostling with the idea of, do I mandate a return to office? We want to bring the culture back. Is there a generational difference? Collaboration. We're hearing all of productivity. We're hearing all of these kind of words being thrown around. And so it kind of has created an atmosphere that's ripe for Doris, because that's where we can help, leaders really understand what does it mean and parse apart that big ball of twine. And so I think a couple of things that we have been talking about now, probably for over a year, is really vetting assumptions that we're making. A lot of people like to talk about generational differences. And so we do a lot of talking about how there's math word, there's a correlation between age and job level at an organization. And so generally speaking, as you move up in an organization, you're seeing older people, different generation. And because of that, it's confounded with the type of work you do. And so when you're higher in an organization, you're looking more high level strategy, operational, organizational functionality and productivity, versus as you move down, you're the ladder, right? You're moving into more independent individual work, which has very different needs and very different metrics from which we're measured upon. And so what people are going to do is they're going to leverage their environment so that they can achieve their goals, right? So it's sort of like that article you were just talking about, where if we are all on the same page as defining what success looks like, then we can move in the same direction. But oftentimes we're using the same word to mean two different things. So we often talk about big something versus little something. So for example, big P productivity versus little p productivity. Little p productivity is what a lot of people are talking about, checking tasks off your task list. I'm super productive from home because I can get all my stuff done and I'm not interrupted. When leaders are talking about productivity, generally speaking, they're talking about organizational productivity, making sure we're moving forward, we're increasing our profit, we're, more clients, more revenue, more innovation, whatever it may be that the big P metrics are. And so when we're having conversations about productivity, but they mean two very different things, then we're miscommunicating, right? And we're leveraging our environment, our decisions to maximize two very different activities. So it's that sort of thing, but over and over again that we're finding.
And it's been highlighted by work from home, right? Like it's never been so probably highlighted as it has been post-pandemic.
Yeah. Now, why is that? Is it just because people aren't like seeing, like they're hearing it, but they're not seeing action behind it? Like what drives that disparity because of the pandemic?
I would be very curious your response to this, Meghan, too. But the pandemic just opened an opportunity. It like forced us to do something really quickly all together Like I even think about before, in January of 2020, if somebody sent me a video call, I would have panicked. I would have been like trying to figure out how to be on it like 30 minutes early to make sure all my like tech was working, right? Because that would have just been weird. But then the pandemic forced us all, I can operate in multiple different virtual meetings, very seamlessly at this point. And so can pretty much everyone. So it provided us with this really big opportunity to think differently. And I think we immediately went pretty surface level with that. Like, okay, this means like very tactically, I can operate a laptop from anywhere in the world. I can hit my link and I know how to operate my audio. And I know I should probably turn my video on if I want to get a raise at some point, like I kind of knew that much. But I think it wasn't as intuitive to get beyond that. Now, what do we do? Like, oh, we're actually still really people. This is back to the whole vibe thing. Like, okay, yeah, we can all technically do this, but we probably need to establish some bigger, higher level frameworks around how should we do this? What else should we be doing? Just because it feels really good to sit in my pajamas all day doesn't mean I should. Like, I want to eat bacon every day for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but I shouldn't probably. Like, there are other things I probably need to work in or whatever it might be. And I think that's where we are, 4 years into this. We're maybe just early stages having some benchmarking data to look at what's happening. But there's a lot there to still unpack, I think.
Well, you bring up a really good point, right? Is like everyone was almost just given the autonomy to go do, but going big P to little p, right? The autonomy means something completely different to everyone. And what they can do with that, it means very different things, especially based on like your season of life, right? And then the level of your position. And then there's like so many inputs to what that actually means for an individual. And I think there was assumptions made that it just like everybody generally understood what it meant when that's not in fact the case whatsoever.
Yeah, I'm having two thoughts at once. One is intentionality. I think pre-pandemic, we rested on our laurels and we used the fact that we were all together as sort of the easy button. And I think a lot of people would love to just hit rewind and go back and be like, oh, it was easy because I could stop by. I could see what they were doing. And so we didn't have to rely on trust and intentionality because there was an element of oversight that just inherently was happening. Now, with that gone, you have to rely on trust. I trust you to get your work done. If you don't, it's not the location, it's a behavior problem, right? So we talk a lot about don't make your office punitive, right? It shouldn't be a punishment to come into the office. You should have a vibe and a reason why. And, it's the difference in me to we, right? Our organization, if you work here for us, with us, then, here are some requirements of being here. And during the pandemic, the one thing everybody could agree upon was survival. Everybody was in survival mode. I'm going to work real hard from home so I can keep my job because I don't want us to have layoffs. It was this moment of intense pressure that swung a pendulum so far. And then what we're trying to do is bring it back, and everybody's handling that in very different ways. But I think the intentionality behind the conversations is really where we're finding the most success is, what are the organizational goals and how do you fit in? And how do we build trust? I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with leaders over the past 3 years about that's not a space issue, that's a trust issue.
Yeah, because it's probably, you guys probably see it a ton where they're like, if we just make our physical space really awesome, people will want to come here. Like, why wouldn't they want to come here? Right? And you're like, well, there's a lot of reasons why they don't want to come here because you suck as a leader and they don't want to interact with you. So you can make your space really beautiful and have all the coolest furniture and all the thing, but they actually don't even want to hang out with you. So that is you're right. Like we rested on our laurels and like the ping pong table and the with snacks and the cool office space and the like, open concept. I remember when I was working in an office and they went from like high cube walls, like open concept and drop-in space and hoteling and blah, 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 blah. And it was like, this is cool and all, but like, it doesn't mean that I just want to be here every day, all day.
Right.
Crazy. Okay. So what if you could think about like the one thing that organizations or executives or people leaders can walk away from this conversation and go do next, right? So something really simple that just gets the needle moving, even if it's 1%. Because my belief is like, just move it the right way. And then the snowball effect starts to happen. What is that one thing that you guys would recommend or suggest or advise leaders to do, or organizations as a whole, besides call you and talk to you?
You want me? Yeah, call it. Just call Meghan.
Call Doris.
The thing is that I was thinking about this earlier, and Meghan, I hope I'm not stealing
my answer,
your answer. But I'm going first just in case.
Yeah, okay. Multiple choice.
Control C, Control V. Yeah, exactly. Well, I think if there's one thing you could do, and it's like I'm going to have a two-part answer. So go listen to people. Like, just ask some questions and just listen. Don't give advice. Don't try to solution. Just listen to what they're telling you about their day-to-day lives. Be curious about how things go for them. And then sit in the ick of that for a while. Maybe document it somewhere. So like, this is the part where leaders don't love when we show up and we sit in the ick with them and we say, here are the challenges, and we don't have solutions to these yet. I would practice that. Like, just let something be a challenge. Don't solve it. Wait, just sit on it, maybe document it, maybe show it to other people, maybe get their solutions, but sit in that. That would be my...
Sit in the ick. Oh my gosh, I love that. Is that something you guys talk about a lot?
Do we talk about that? Did I steal that? I'm sure I stole that from somebody. It's probably like...
I don't know, but I do know that we tell leaders a lot. It's going to be uncomfortable, but we're going to be here with you. Not solving yet. Sit in the ick. Yeah. The curiosity was going to be my answer as well. Be curious, and not curious for performative sake, right? Don't, send a survey to say that we heard your voice, but truly listen and engage and hear the different perspectives so that the solution is at least vetted, right? Vet your assumptions. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're setting expectations to a level that you don't want to set them to. Just because you ask a question doesn't mean that you have to provide the answer, but in asking the question is really powerful.
So if there's one question leaders can start with, right, to just start that conversation, is there one in particular that like is your go-to? Or obviously I don't want to give away all your secrets, but what, like, just to get things started, right? Because there are leaders out there that I coach all the time and they're like, I can really ask that, or are you sure I can say that? Or like, gosh, I wish I would have thought of that. That seems so simple. So is there anyone in particular that like gets the ball rolling?
My gut says to ask them about the biggest barriers to their day. What's the biggest barrier to you? And you probably don't want those answers because you're going to feel like you have to fix it immediately. But I think in learning those barriers, you might learn, I could make an impact and it doesn't have to be monetary. Or, the beer keg is not the thing that's going to impact the vibe. But if I do something else, I think you can really start to tell how you can make an impact on people's lives in different ways if you can understand the barriers.
I don't get to do the research as much anymore, but I think, Meghan, correct me if I'm wrong, when y'all start interviews with people, do you not ask them how kind of they are doing that particular day at that particular moment? I don't know how you ask it. What's the question?
It's kind of about the vibe. It's like, how are you? How's your energy today? How are you doing? And we just let that be the foundation of the beginning of the conversation.
I feel like that is so easy, but so important to maybe precede the question that Meghan just gave, because there's going to be a power imbalance there probably. And if you don't enable the person to get a little bit more relaxed and comfortable, and you just jump into asking them about their biggest barrier, they might not answer you super honestly.
Yeah, that's really true, Sam.
And that's awesome. Yeah, like let their guard down a little bit so they know that it's like safe and they can trust them. Maybe it's like building the trust and then getting the information about their biggest barrier. Those are great. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. Like, I am so intrigued by the work that you're doing. I just think it's so powerful because it answers the question of why. And that is just, I don't remember exactly how you put it, Meghan, but like, you have to have insights with the data, and without it, I don't know, you said it so eloquently, but anyways, it's just like so profound. So you can answer the question why. It's like a light bulb went off. I'm mind blown.
Oh, well, thank you for having us. This has been great.
Thank you for joining me and for all of your wisdom and just progressive thought, I would say, and what's shaping the workplace of the future. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kristi.
I just loved how Meghan and Sam opened up to share their personal journeys and the defining moments that led them to start enjoying Doris. It's so fascinating to hear about the integration of qualitative and quantitative research in understanding workplace dynamics and improving organizational performance. This duo is used to gain comprehensive understanding of employee experiences and behaviors. And I just loved how they emphasize the need for leaders to listen actively and be curious about their employees' challenges and perspectives, and suggest that leaders should ask questions, listen without providing immediate solutions, which is sitting in the ick, and be open to different perspectives. We had a blast, and I hope you did too. Keep vibing, my friends. If this episode inspired you and you want to see how you can take the next step to creating a better vibe within your organization, I'd love for you to download our complimentary 75 Vibes worksheet. This is a simple tool to create a habit and mindset around creating great vibes in work and life. The best part, it's simple and it works.